I'm going back to my hometown to give birth. You're in the way. So can you please move out? One day after coming back from work, I found my sister, who was supposed to have moved out after getting married years ago, in my room. She was ostentatiously stroking her swollen belly. But even seeing her like this, I couldn't say anything, staring blankly around the room. I was stunned, and my sister let out a vulgar laugh. "Having an old maid like you around is just nuance," she said. "I threw away everything in the room to make it easier for you to leave, so you should be thankful." Everything was as usual in my room when I left for work in the morning, but now it's empty. Not even the bed, table, rug, or curtains were left. Literally nothing was there. The only thing there was my sister, standing defiantly in the middle of the room. "Your phone and wallet are in your bag, right? So you won't die of exposure and you shouldn't be mooching off our parents anymore. It's about time you started living on your own, all right?" I didn't think about taking my things back or kicking my sister out. I just wanted to leave because I didn't want to see her face anymore. As I turned my back, I could hear my sister laughing uncontrollably. "You can't say anything even now, aren't you too weak?" I ignored her obvious mockery and continued down the hallway. My father was on the phone in the living room, and my mother was probably preparing dinner. My father's cheerful voice and my mother's humming filled the background as I passed through the front door, breathing in the night air. I readjusted my bag on my shoulder and headed towards the Hotel Rich downtown area. On the way, it suddenly hit me. Come to think of it, who's going to pay for the house's mortgage from now on? Well, whatever. I'm Mani, a 27-year-old office worker. While working as an office worker, I also have a side job. I live a steady life as an office worker, but I do what I love in my side job. I dabble in video editing, web writing, and running a blog, among other things. At 27, one is often considered to be at the age to think about marriage in society, but I'm not very interested in love or marriage. It's partly because I enjoy my work, but also because my sister was treated like a princess at home, and I felt ostracized by my family. So I don't have the desire to build a happy family. I have always lived at home with my parents. I share household chores with my mother, though I mostly do them myself. My mom comes home from her part-time job feeling wiped out, and seeing her like that makes me think I, being younger, should take care of the household chores. Ever since I started working, I've been contributing double the amount to our household expenses compared to a friend of mine who lives alone in New York. I'm more of an indoor person who likes studying and didn't go out much even during my student days, so I don't have many desires for material things. Aside from saving, I didn't have much use for the money I earned. Even after becoming a working adult, I didn't go out much, so I contributed more to the household expenses, thinking it would ease my parents' burden a bit. Plus, since last year, I've been putting in money for the mortgage as well, at my parents' request. My parents seem to think that since I'm responsible and earn a decent living, it's no problem for me to contribute more towards the household expenses and mortgage. However, I feel like my parents aren't that interested in me. That's probably because their attention has always been on my sister Madison, who's a year younger than me. Madison is outgoing and very active. She used to go out somewhere every weekend during her student days. My parents naturally assumed that Madison's lifestyle required money, so even when she was living at home, they never asked her to contribute to the household expenses, let alone the mortgage. It seems like my parents have ingrained the idea that I, the older sister, am low maintenance while Madison requires more attention. A while ago, Madison moved out to live on her own. Her place of work isn't far from our parents' house, and I wondered why she wanted to live alone. When I asked her, she said, "Because I want to experience living by myself. I want to go out at night and have my boyfriend over." That was far from the answer I was expecting. I thought she wanted to make things easier for our parents, or wanted to be independent. On the other hand, I had no intention of leaving home, thinking it natural to help each other out since we're a family living together, even if it means putting in a bit more for the household expenses. Then, when I returned home after a while, Madison was waiting for me. "Hey, I'm getting married, and I want you to come to both families' gatherings, would you?" It was going to be held at a traditional restaurant in New York, and she told me, "Make sure you wear proper clothes, okay? If you wear your usual plain clothes, I'll be laughed at." Even so, I don't own any flashy clothes. I decided to attend in my usual formal clothes. After all, this is the most respectful attire I have. Madison's fiancé seemed sincere and was a genuinely nice young man. "Nice to meet you," he said, leaving a very good impression on me. I thought Madison had chosen a really good partner for herself. Maybe being with him will calm her down a bit, I thought, feeling quite sisterly initially. Both families were quite formal and tense, but as the drinks flowed, the formality and tension eased, and the conversation shifted towards talks of children after marriage. Our family embarrassingly has our eldest daughter, Jacqueline, who is almost 30 and still unmarried with no plans of marriage. So it looks like we'll only be able to see grandchildren from our younger daughter, Madison. "We're so eager to see them," my parents said. "When I get married, I want to have kids right away, maybe 3, Madison said, and the conversation got more animated. Suddenly, I noticed Madison's husband's once cheerful smile had turned into a strained expression, looking uncomfortable. I felt the same discomfort. I wished it would end soon. After that, my parents started doting on Madison as an investment for their first grandchild. If Madison mentioned eating this food is said to make it easier to get pregnant, they would immediately buy it and tell her, "Madison, eat a lot of this." There was a day they went shopping together for dresses after hearing tight clothes might be why you can't get pregnant, and if it was said visiting this place brings blessings of children, they even go on a trip together. My parents always acted on whatever Madison suggested, so to me, it was just them doing their usual thing. However, one day, Madison made a sarcastic comment to me. "Because you're not married and not making any effort to show a grandchild's face, I have to go through all this trouble. Must be nice for you to live an easy single life. Don't we want to get married and move out? Oh, but with that plain face of yours, no man would come near you. You need a bit more appeal. Should I teach you how to do your makeup?" She laughed. I was irked by her words, but I knew arguing back would only lead to her throwing a fit, making things worse. So I chose to stay silent. Madison has always been confident that she's more loved by our parents than I am, often speaking boldly to me. Then one day, Madison got pregnant. Even if someone like her gets visited by the stork, I wondered if Madison could become a mother. But remembering her husband, I thought maybe he'd be okay with it. Madison quit her job easily, saying, "Being pregnant, I don't want to be a burden at work and I want to focus on raising my child." However, her husband seemed to think that raising a child and having a stay-at-home wife wasn't realistic with his earnings alone. But Madison didn't listen to him and quit her job on her own accord. One day, when I returned from work, my room's door was slightly open. I'm a neat person, so I never leave closets or drawers open and always close the door tightly. My parents wouldn't have entered to clean since I do all the cleaning. Apprehensively, I opened the door to my room and was shocked. Everything was gone. I wasn't one for having a lot of stuff, but things I've cherished since childhood were supposed to be stored in labeled boxes in the closet. My parents bought me a dictionary for my 10th birthday. My grandparents gave me a wallet when I turned 15 as a gift. And now my diploma, certificates, trophies, and albums are all gone. These were items I kept because no matter how worn out or old they were precious to me. Everything that was supposed to be there until this morning disappeared without a trace. Standing alone in the empty room, I heard a familiar voice from behind. "Oh, did you come back? I decided to come back home for my childbirth." Looking at my sister's face, I immediately knew she must have moved out of my stuff. "Madison, where did you put my things in the closet?" I asked in a panic, but my sister said with a laugh, "Why are you so flustered? It wasn't anything important, right? It was just junk." Hearing my precious belongings referred to as junk, anger surged within me. "What's junk to you is important to me. Give them back now. And how dare you move all my stuff out while I'm not around? That's insane." It must have been the first time she saw me raise my voice like that, so she was surprised with wide eyes. She spat out, "I've already thrown them away." I think this is the first time in my 27 years of life that I've been this angry, and I couldn't stop. Enough is enough. It's outrageous to throw away someone's belongings without permission. Put everything back right now. But my sister, unapologetic, said, "It's already been picked up by the garbage truck. It's impossible to get it back now." Looking at me as if I were ridiculous, she then added, "What's the big deal anyway? Getting so mad over some junk? Are you crazy? Don't yell like that. It's bad for my baby." While blatantly rubbing her belly, she continued, "I've decided to keep living here even after the baby is born. It's going to be hard after childbirth, and Mom and Dad want to see their grandchild every day. And since Austin is going to be staying here too, just my room won't be enough, right? So I decided to use your room too. You understand, right? You're such a disgrace to our parents." I was completely flabbergasted by her utterly selfish actions. Coming home for childbirth is supposed to be a temporary return, but she's planning to live here with her husband and child. That's not just a temporary stay, that's moving in. And on top of that, she's unilaterally branding me as a disgrace. My anger just boiled over. Do you even realize how disgraceful you are? Staying at home without getting married? I'm going to show our parents their grandchild and live here so they can see my baby every day. Who do you think is helping our parents? It was clear she was blaming me, but I couldn't just stand there and listen. If you want to live in this house as a family, then it's something a whole family should discuss, especially since you want to use my room. You should have said something beforehand, if you had a set date to come back, but... Before I could finish, my sister cut me off by banging on my room door loudly. "Shut up. See, you're always making a fuss about everything. That's why I made it so you'd have to leave. It's so annoying." That's just her being defensive. She's the one who's at fault for planning to use someone's room and throwing out the belongings of the person currently living there. Yet she talks as if she's the victim. My sister kept banging on the door over and over. "Get lost. Disappear. Never come back." I was just dumbfounded. "Fine. I'll leave as you wish. I don't have any belongings to pack anyway, so no need for packing time." The anger that had built up so much had now vanished into sheer astonishment. I even felt like I never wanted to see her again. I turned around and headed straight for the entrance. My parents didn't seem to notice me leaving. Just after I had gotten home, my dad was on the phone, probably bragging to a relative about how his pregnant daughter was coming back to live with them permanently. My mom seemed to be in the kitchen, possibly making my sister's favorite dishes, humming a tune. I wasn't living with my family expecting anything in return. Even as children, I understood the difference in how my sister and I were treated because she had a charm about her and knew how to sweet-talk our parents. But even as an adult, taking care of most things at home, this is how I'm treated, despite allocating most of my salary to household expenses and the mortgage to make our lives easier. And they welcome my sister, who hasn't contributed a dime, with open arms. The negative aspects of my parents, which I had tried to ignore along with my sister's actions, morphed into disdain. Hey, pause for a moment. Would you care to support us? Like this video and subscribe for more. Now let's dive back into the story. Without saying goodbye or seeing you later, I opened the front door. No one, neither my parents nor my sister, called out to me before the door closed behind me. A week later, at the end of the month, was payday. Normally, it would be the day I transferred living expenses and mortgage payments into my dad's account, but I didn't make any deposits. I had no obligation to pay the mortgage for a house I no longer lived in. The mortgage was originally taken out by my dad, so it should have been planned with his income in mind, ensuring it could be paid back without strain. There shouldn't be any financial issues just because I stopped contributing. However, my mom called me in a panic a while later. "Jacqueline, it's terrible. We've received a delinquency notice for the mortgage. I checked, and there's no money in your father's account." She rattled on before I could even respond, clearly flustered. "Jacqueline, do you know why you didn't withdraw it? Did you?" Contrary to her panicked tone, I responded calmly. "All I did was stop making deposits. I didn't withdraw anything. If you're talking about a missed mortgage payment, then it means the automatic withdrawal didn't go through, right? Did you make sure there was enough balance on the withdrawal date? You didn't make a deposit. Why?" My mom muttered in utter confusion, which made me just puzzled. "Well, because it was agreed that I'd contribute to the living expenses and the mortgage since I was living at home. If I moved out, I wouldn't keep paying, right? I'm not living there anymore." It seemed like she finally understood after I said that, as I could hear her catching her breath softly. "Right. Then you don't need to pay for living expenses. But could you still contribute to the mortgage? You should have enough to spare even living alone, right?" "Sorry, but that's impossible. My current rent alone costs $10,000. I'm stretched thin as it is, so I can't afford to pay for a mortgage on a house I'll never return to." $10,000? You're just an employee, right? How could you afford such a place? My mom's voice was filled with shock, and I sighed. "It's the same amount I used to give home every month, remember? Asking me now, it's clear you weren't interested in me. In that case, I can't discuss money matters with you anymore right now. It seems like you only see me as a wallet. I could hear my mom whimpering on the other end of the line. Her repeated no was more feeble than I'd ever heard. I didn't feel sorry for her. It's been a month since I quietly left home, yet there's no concern for my well-being, only money. It's painfully clear they're interested only in my money, not me. That's why I never mentioned that besides my main job, I also do a wide range of side jobs online, making my total income far surpass my father's monthly salary. I had been contributing $10,000 a month, partly as savings to the mortgage that still has 15 years left. But my mom thought that was my father's income, given his age and years of service. It's perhaps understandable she thought so, but didn't she ever notice the exact amount being deposited every month? Even a glance at my dad's payslip would show otherwise. Ultimately, she didn't care where the money came from. That's probably why she didn't notice when the monthly income dropped by more than half. Only when the mortgage withdrawals failed due to insufficient funds, leading to a collection notice by mail, did she finally realize. Realizing only after it's gone, in a way that's very much like her, and I couldn't help but give a thin smile. Lately, caught up in first grandchild fever, it seems they've been splurging on expensive items like a baby crib, stroller, designer baby clothes, and maternity photos, all because my sister asked for them. But if Jacqueline doesn't make a deposit, we won't be able to make ends meet from now on. Could you send some money as remittance? I already told you that's impossible. Why not ask Madison, who's going to live with you, to contribute some to the living expenses? If that's not enough, maybe Mom could work more hours. My words were met with a shriek from my mom. Madison just gave birth. How can I increase my hours when she needs help with the baby? It'd be too much. Are you suggesting Madison should work too? How can you say something so awful? I didn't mean it like that. If Madison and her husband are going to live with you, it makes sense for them to contribute to the living expenses. Didn't I do the same? Plus, Austin is still working, right? Are you planning to live together without him contributing anything? I tried to respond as calmly as possible to avoid agitating her further, followed by silence. It might be okay if it's just for the homecoming period, but Madison said she's going to live there from now on, and Dad seems to think the same. If that's the case, it would be better for everyone living together to discuss how to handle finances and contributions. I've already moved out, so I won't be part of that conversation, I said, waiting for a response, but there was none. Well, I'm going to hang up now. I don't plan to contact you or Dad or Madison anymore, so I'll block all of you once we hang up. You can delete my contact information too. Bye. I ended the call on my smartphone. The last thing I heard was my mom, stunned. What? Before she could call again, I quickly set my phone to block all three of them. After completing the setting, I took a deep breath and walked over to the window of my living room from my apartment on the 25th floor. I had to look down to see people outside. After leaving home, I moved into what you call a high-rise luxury apartment. My side income had exploded, allowing me to save up to $20,000 a month even after sending $10,000 home. Remembering how my mom would spend any money she had, I'm glad I never suggested paying off the mortgage in a lump sum. After all, my parents wanted me out. Madison couldn't have moved my bed and table by herself when she was nearly due. Someone helped her. While I'd like to think Austin wouldn't clear out a room of its lived-in items, if such a large-scale move had happened, both my parents would have noticed. They were home all day when I was the only one out working, yet they said nothing when I got back and ignored me as I left. Whether they were manipulated by Madison or not, it's clear my parents were complicit in driving me out. Realizing my parents and sister were all the same made me give up everything and decide to leave home at that moment. If I had paid off the mortgage in full, the three of them would be living comfortably in a spacious house. I couldn't stand the thought of that anymore. I silently picked up the phone and called the security desk on the first floor. It seemed they were already handling it, because even as I was on the phone, I could see through the monitor that my sister was being dragged away. I confirmed that the person being removed was my sister and asked them not to let her through under any circumstances, apologizing repeatedly while holding the phone. In the end, Madison never pressed my apartment's intercom again. The security personnel must have handled it appropriately. Later, I heard from neighbors back home that the family house was put up for sale. Madison and Austin continued to clash, heading towards a lawsuit without giving an inch to each other. But as Madison was clearly in the wrong, hearing that legal fees might be included in the compensation, she finally gave up. In the end, Madison had to pay Austin the amount of alimony he requested. It seems she submitted DNA test results to the court showing no biological relation to the child, which relieved her of any child support obligations. Madison had no savings at all, and the responsibility for the alimony payment fell on my parents. However, due to falling behind on mortgage payments, the bank foreclosed on the house. With no way to cover the mortgage due to reckless spending and taking on alimony, my parents sold the house and used the money to pay off the housing loan. As a result, the family home was sold, and the four of them moved into a cheaper place nearby. Even though my dad's income should have been enough to live on, the sudden drop in their standard of living caused stress to accumulate constantly, souring the atmosphere. Plus, they couldn't forget the lifestyle they had when I was contributing, so my dad's salary was almost gone within a few days of the deposit. Eventually, my mom continued her part-time work, and Madison somehow managed to find a new job. Despite using daycare, she's overwhelmed with housework, childcare, and work, less than a year after giving birth, leaving her spirit in tatters. The only consolation is that Madison's child is growing up healthy. However, I can't see them raising the child without worries. So meddling as I may be, I had a neighbor give them some flyers for childcare support. On my end, my dedication at work since I was a new graduate has been recognized, and I was promoted. I'm now leading a group on a new project. My side businesses are also doing well, with a gradual increase in income. One of my side gigs as a web writer took off when a series of articles I wrote was published as a book. The content covering topics not widely available online became popular and even made it to the bestseller list. This success positively impacted my other side jobs, creating a virtuous cycle, challenging new things, feeling just the right amount of tiredness, and returning to my comfortable home every day. I am truly happy. Let's conclude the story shortly. Mani's decision to leave her family home was a turning point in her life. It was a painful and difficult choice, but it was ultimately the best decision for her. She realized her family's true nature, prioritizing money and convenience over their own daughter's well-being. Manny's life blossomed after she left. She continued to thrive in her career, found fulfillment in her side businesses, and achieved a level of independence she had never known before. She discovered a sense of self-worth and happiness that was impossible to find in the suffocating environment of her family home. While her parents and sister faced challenges after the house was sold and their financial situation deteriorated, Mani found peace and contentment in her own life. She learned to value herself and her happiness, and she was finally free to pursue her dreams and live life on her terms. The story serves as a reminder that sometimes the most difficult decisions can lead to the most rewarding outcomes. It's a testament to the strength and resilience of the human spirit, and the importance of prioritizing one's happiness and well-being. After experiencing the full journey of our story, we'd love to hear your thoughts. How did the story resonate with you? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay blessed. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the ninth grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? "I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hope to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.